Get out of my store.
The words cracked through the jewelry boutique like a gunshot. The old man froze. His hands trembled. Not because he was guilty, because everyone was staring. Every customer, every employee, every security guard, all looking at him as if he were a criminal. I didn't take anything. His voice was weak, almost broken. The manager slammed a palm onto the glass display case. Then explain why the diamond disappeared right after you touched it. The old man looked around helplessly. His gray jacket was worn at the elbows. His shoes had been repaired so many times that the leather no longer matched. He looked completely out of place among the marble floors and crystal chandeliers. A security guard stepped forward. Another blocked the exit. The old man swallowed hard. My daughter is waiting for me. Nobody listened. A woman in a designer coat shook her head. These people always have an excuse. The words cut deeper than any knife. The old man lowered his eyes. His face turned red, not from anger, from humiliation. Then the police arrived, and his life ended, not physically. But everything else died that day. His reputation, his dignity, his future. For the next 10 years, the city remembered only one thing: Daniel Carter, the jeweler's thief. The man who stole a $20 million diamond. The man who was never able to prove his innocence. The man who died, carrying a stain he did not deserve. And 10 years later, his daughter walked through the same doors. The boutique had changed. The chandeliers were newer. The marble was brighter. The staff wore different uniforms. But Clara recognized the place instantly. Some memories never fade, especially the painful ones. She stopped in front of the entrance. Rain dripped from the edge of her umbrella. For a long moment, she simply stood there, looking, remembering. 10 years ago, she had been 16, standing outside these same doors, waiting for her father, waiting for him to come home. Instead, she watched him leave in the back of a police car. She remembered his eyes, not angry, not afraid, just confused, as if he couldn't understand what was happening, as if the world had suddenly become a place that no longer made sense. The memory still haunted her, even now. She folded the umbrella, took a breath, and stepped inside. The scent of expensive perfume filled the air, the same scent she remembered from that terrible day. A young employee approached with a practiced smile. "Welcome." Clara nodded politely. Her eyes drifted toward the center display, and there it was, the Paragon diamond, the most famous jewel in Manhattan, the diamond that had destroyed her father's life. It glittered beneath the lights, cold, beautiful, untouched by guilt. The employee noticed her staring. "It's magnificent, isn't it?" Clara's expression never changed. "How long has it been here?" "Almost 20 years. Clara looked at the stone, then quietly asked, "Was it ever stolen?" The employee laughed. "Only according to old rumors. That was all her father's suffering had become, a rumor." Clara thanked the employee and walked away. But inside her chest something twisted: pain, anger, grief. 10 years. And nobody remembered the truth. Because nobody had ever known it. 3 months earlier. A small cardboard box had arrived at Clara's apartment. No return address, no note, no explanation. Inside was her father's old pocket watch. The same watch police had returned after his death. The watch she thought she had lost years ago. At first, she almost threw it into a drawer. Then she noticed something strange. The watch felt heavier, much heavier. That night she opened it, examined every inch, and discovered a hidden compartment. Inside was a tiny folded piece of paper, her father's handwriting, just 6 words. "If you're reading this, investigate Victor Hale." That was all. No explanation, no details, just a name. Victor Hale. Clara had never heard it before. But within days, she discovered something shocking. Victor Hale wasn't just anyone. He was one of the most respected businessmen in New York, a billionaire, a philanthropist, a hero in countless newspaper articles. And 10 years ago, he had been inside the boutique on the exact day the diamond vanished. Clara spent months digging. Every night after work, every weekend, every spare moment. She searched old archives, newspaper records, court documents, security reports. The deeper she dug, the stranger everything became. Witness statements had disappeared. Security footage was missing. Several records had been sealed. Even more disturbing, nobody seemed willing to talk. Former employees refused interviews. Retired security guards suddenly stopped answering calls. One man agreed to meet her, then canceled minutes before arriving. The next day, he moved out of state. Clara began to feel it, the invisible wall. Someone powerful had spent years burying the truth, and they had done it well, too well. Most people would have given up. But Clara wasn't most people, because every night she still remembered her father's final days. The apartment had been silent. Daniel Carter sat alone at the kitchen table, the newspaper headline staring back at him. Jewel thief claims innocence. He looked 20 years older than he actually was. Neighbors stopped speaking to him. Employers stopped calling. Friends disappeared. Even strangers recognized him. The humiliation slowly consumed him. One evening, Clara found him staring at the pocket watch, the same watch now resting in her own hands. "Dad," he smiled weakly. "I'm okay." But she knew he wasn't. "Dad, you believe me, right?" The question shattered her heart, not because of what he asked, because of how desperately he needed the answer. She grabbed his hand immediately, without hesitation. "Of course I believe you." His eyes filled with tears. He squeezed her fingers, then nodded, just once, as if that answer was the only thing keeping him alive. Less than a year later, he was gone, a heart attack. At least that's what the doctors said. But Clara always believed something else killed him first: shame. Now she stood inside the boutique once again, 10 years later, looking at the diamond, looking at the lies, looking at the place that had stolen everything. Then she noticed something: a photograph hanging near the executive offices. A framed image from 10 years ago, a celebration event. Wealthy guests smiling, champagne glasses raised. And standing near the center, Victor Hale, young, confident, rich. Exactly where her father had said he would be. Clara stepped closer, her pulse quickened. Then she saw something that made her blood run cold. In the reflection of a glass cabinet behind Victor, a hand. A hand reaching toward the diamond display. A detail so small nobody would notice. Nobody except someone looking for it. Someone desperate enough to spend 10 years searching. Clara stared at the photograph. Every instinct told her she had just found the first crack in a very old lie. And somewhere deep inside the building, someone else was watching her, watching very carefully. Because the moment Clara Carter walked back into the boutique, the truth became dangerous again. And dangerous truths always make powerful people nervous. Clara couldn't stop staring at the photograph, the hand, the reflection, the tiny detail hidden in the glass. It was there, she was certain. Someone had reached toward the display case. Someone standing directly behind Victor Hale. Yet nobody had ever mentioned it. Not in court, not in the newspapers, not in any police report. How could something so important simply disappear? Unless somebody wanted it to disappear. A cold feeling settled in her stomach. For the first time in 10 years, Clara felt closer to the truth, and that frightened her, because the truth was no longer just a memory. It was alive, and powerful people were protecting it. That evening, she visited the city archives. The building was nearly empty. Rows of dusty shelves stretched endlessly beneath fluorescent lights. An elderly archivist led her toward the records section. "You've been here a lot lately." Clara smiled politely. "I'm looking for an old case." The man adjusted his glasses. "The diamond theft?" Clara froze. "You know about it?" The archivist nodded slowly. "Everyone working here knows about it." His expression changed. Not suspicion, regret. "I remember your father." Clara's heartbeat quickened. What was he like? The old man looked away. For a moment, he seemed ashamed. Too kind for this city. The answer hit harder than she expected. Because nobody had spoken kindly about Daniel Carter in years. For 3 hours, Clara searched. Old newspapers, court transcripts, insurance records, everything. Then she found something strange. A witness statement, or rather, the absence of one. Several reports referenced testimony from a woman named Eleanor Brooks. Yet the testimony itself was missing. Every page before it existed. Every page after it existed. Only Eleanor's statement had vanished. Someone had physically removed it. Clara copied the name immediately, then searched for an address. Amazingly, she found one. The house stood at the edge of Brooklyn, small, quiet, surrounded by dying rose bushes. Clara knocked. No answer. She knocked again. Still nothing. Then the door opened a few inches. An elderly woman peered through the gap. Her eyes widened instantly. "You need to leave." Clara blinked. You know who I am? The woman's face turned pale. Please. Did you know my father? The woman looked over her shoulder, as if someone might be watching. Then she whispered something Clara would never forget. They told me you would come someday. Clara felt the world stop. They? The woman opened her mouth, then suddenly closed it again. Fear flooded her eyes, raw fear. The kind that doesn't disappear with age. You have to leave. What happened 10 years ago? I can't, please. Tears appeared in the woman's eyes. I already lost enough. Then she slammed the door. Clara sat in her car for nearly an hour. Rain tapped softly against the windshield. The encounter made no sense. How could a witness know Clara would come? Who warned her? And why was she so afraid after 10 years? Nothing about this case was normal. Nothing. The next morning, Clara received a phone call. Unknown number, she answered. Silence. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Then a man's voice emerged, low, calm, dangerously calm. Stop investigating. Clara's grip tightened around the phone. Who is this? You won't like what happens next. The line disconnected, just like that. No explanation, no threat. Only a warning, which somehow felt worse. That night, Clara barely slept. She sat beside the kitchen table. Her father's watch open in her hands. Tick, tick, tick. The tiny sound filled the apartment. She remembered something her father used to say. When people try this hard to hide something, the truth is usually worth finding. At the time, she never understood. Now she did. 3 days later, she finally found another lead. A retired security guard named Michael Reyes. He had worked at the boutique during the theft. Unlike everyone else, he agreed to meet. The diner was nearly empty. Only a few truck drivers occupied the booths. Michael arrived 20 minutes late. He looked nervous, constantly checking the windows, constantly looking over his shoulder. Clara immediately sensed something was wrong. You worked security that day? Michael nodded, unfortunately. Do you remember my father? His face softened. Yes. Did he steal the diamond? Michael didn't answer. Instead, he stared into his coffee for a very long time. Then he shook his head, slowly, firmly. No. The word hit Clara like lightning. For 10 years, she had believed her father was innocent. But hearing it from someone who had actually been there felt different. Real. Painfully real. What happened? Michael swallowed. We arrested the wrong man. Clara's eyes filled with tears. Then why didn't anyone say anything? The security guard laughed bitterly. A broken laugh. The laugh of a man carrying guilt. Because people like me needed our jobs. Clara leaned forward. Who took it? Michael looked around again, his hands trembling. Then he reached into his jacket and slid an envelope across the table. I shouldn't be giving you this. Inside was a photograph, old faded, taken by a security camera. The quality was terrible. But Clara immediately recognized Victor Hale, standing near the display case. Only this time there was something else. Someone beside him, a young woman, blonde hair, elegant dress, unknown identity. Clara looked up. Who is she? Michael's face went white. I don't know. You must know something. I know enough. What does that mean? The former guard's voice dropped to a whisper. She's dead. Clara stopped breathing. What? Michael nodded. 6 months after the theft. The diner suddenly felt colder, much colder. How did she die? Michael stared directly into her eyes. And for the first time, she saw genuine fear. Not nervousness, not anxiety. Fear. Officially? Yes. Car accident. The silence that followed lasted several seconds. Then Michael added 4 words. 4 words that changed everything. I don't believe that. Clara drove home in darkness. The photograph sat on the passenger seat. Victor Hale, the mysterious woman, the missing witness, the anonymous phone call. Every answer seemed to create 3 new questions. But one thing had become clear. Her father had never been the real target. Someone else had. Someone connected to Victor Hale. Someone who ended up dead. As Clara pulled into her apartment parking lot, her phone buzzed. A text message. Unknown number. No greeting. No explanation. Just one sentence. A sentence that made her blood run cold. Stop asking about the woman in the photo. She stared at the screen, heart pounding, because only 2 people knew about that photograph. Michael Reyes and herself. Slowly, Clara turned toward the empty parking lot. A terrible feeling crawling up her spine. Someone was watching. Someone had always been watching. And somewhere in New York, a powerful man was beginning to realize that Daniel Carter's daughter was far more dangerous than her father had ever been. Meanwhile, Clara still didn't know the most shocking truth of all. The woman in the photograph wasn't a stranger. She had known Daniel Carter personally. And before she died, she left behind something that could destroy Victor Hale forever. Clara didn't sleep. Not that night. Not after the text message. Stop asking about the woman in the photo. The words kept replaying in her mind, again and again and again. Whoever sent it knew exactly what she was doing, which meant one thing: she was getting close, very close. The next morning, she drove back to Brooklyn. Not to Eleanor Brooks, not to the boutique, not to the archives. She went somewhere nobody expected: the cemetery. The woman in the photograph had a name now. Michael Reyes had eventually given it to her after 3 more phone calls. Emily Dawson, 26 years old. Official cause of death: vehicle collision. 6 months after the diamond theft, case closed, at least according to the city. But Clara no longer trusted anything the city claimed. Emily's grave sat beneath an old maple tree. Simple, modest, forgotten, no fresh flowers, no visitors. No signs that anyone had come recently. Clara stood silently, looking at the headstone. Then she noticed something unusual: a small metal plaque attached to the back. Most visitors would never see it. The inscription read, "Truth survives where fear cannot." Clara frowned. It felt deliberate, almost like a message. Then she remembered something. Her father used to say those exact words. She froze. The same words, exactly the same. A chill ran through her body. How could that be possible? 2 hours later, she found the answer. At least part of it. An elderly groundskeeper remembered Emily. Barely, but enough. She came here often. With family? The old man shook his head. With an older gentleman. Clara's heart skipped. What did he look like? The man thought for a moment. Thin, gray hair, always carrying a pocket watch. The world seemed to stop. Her father. It had to be her father. For years, Clara believed Daniel Carter was just an unfortunate employee caught in the wrong place. Now she realized something far more shocking. He had known Emily, personally, before the theft, long before, which meant the entire story was bigger than anyone imagined. Much bigger. That night, she searched her father's belongings again. Every box, every notebook, every photograph, every receipt. Anything. Hours passed. Nothing. Then, just before midnight, she discovered an old address book hidden behind a loose panel in a bookshelf. The pages were yellow with age. Most names meant nothing. But halfway through the book, she found it. Emily Dawson. A phone number. An address. And beside the name, a single handwritten note: trust her. Clara stared at the words. Her father trusted Emily. Enough to write it down, enough to hide it, enough to remember it, even years later. Tears filled her eyes. For the first time, she felt close to him again. As if he were reaching across time, trying to help her, trying to guide her, trying to finish what he never could. The next lead came unexpectedly. Emily's apartment building still existed. Old, run down, half abandoned. The landlord was reluctant to talk. Until Clara showed him a photograph. Then his expression changed. Emily. He nodded slowly. I remember her. What happened after she died? The man shrugged. Nobody claimed her things. Clara felt a surge of hope. What happened to them? They were placed in storage. Her pulse quickened. Do you still have them? The landlord hesitated, then nodded. Most of it. The storage room smelled of dust and old paper. Boxes stacked from floor to ceiling. Decades of forgotten lives. The landlord pointed toward a corner. That's hers. Then he left. Clara suddenly found herself alone. Alone with the possessions of a woman who might hold the key to everything. She opened the first box: books, photographs, clothing, nothing useful. The second box contained journals, receipts, letters. Again, nothing obvious. Then she opened the third box and found a small cassette recorder. Her breath caught. A cassette recorder, old, outdated, almost ancient, but intact. Beside it sat 3 tapes, carefully labeled tape 1, tape 2, tape 3. Her hands began to shake. Back at her apartment, she borrowed an old player. The first tape contained ordinary conversations. Friends, family, nothing important. The second tape changed everything. A woman's voice filled the room. Emily, older than Clara expected. Nervous, scared. If anything happens to me, The tape crackled, then continued. If anything happens to me, Victor Hale is responsible. Clara nearly dropped the recorder. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Emily continued speaking. I saw him. Silence, then breathing, heavy breathing. As if she were struggling to stay calm. I saw him take the diamond. Clara stopped breathing. The room went completely silent. Every nerve in her body focused on the tape. I told Daniel. Emily's voice trembled. He wanted to go to the police. More static. Then another sentence. The sentence that shattered everything. They framed him before he could. Clara covered her mouth. Tears instantly filled her eyes. Her father knew. Her father had known from the beginning. And because he knew, they destroyed him. The recording continued. Victor Hale had taken the diamond, not for money, for leverage. The stone contained hidden ownership records connected to illegal financial transfers. Daniel accidentally discovered the truth. Emily witnessed the theft. Together they planned to expose him. But Victor moved first. He planted evidence, manipulated witnesses, used his influence, and turned Daniel Carter into the perfect scapegoat. By the time anyone questioned the story, the damage was already done. Clara sat motionless, listening, crying. 10 years. 10 years of shame. 10 years of suffering. 10 years of people calling her father a thief. And all along, he had been trying to do the right thing, just like she always believed. Then the tape ended, abruptly, too abruptly. There was supposed to be more. Much more. Emily had clearly been saying something important, something critical. But the recording stopped. Clara reached for tape 3. Hands shaking, heart pounding. She pressed play, nothing. Only static. Then a loud sound. A door opening, footsteps, a woman gasping, Emily, suddenly terrified. And then a man's voice, deep, calm, dangerously calm. Victor Hale. I told you this would happen. The tape ended. Clara stared at the recorder, frozen, because she had just heard the voice of the man responsible. The man who destroyed her father. The man who terrified Emily. The man who spent 10 years hiding the truth. And now she finally had evidence. Real evidence. Not suspicions, not theories, evidence. For the first time since beginning her investigation, Clara felt hope. Real hope. Then someone knocked on her apartment door. 3 slow knocks, knock, 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 midnight. Nobody should have been there. Clara's stomach tightened. The knocking came again, louder this time. Then a voice. A familiar voice. Michael Reyes, the former security guard. Clara. His voice sounded panicked. Don't open the door. She froze. What? Then he shouted, louder, desperate. They followed me. A second later, something crashed against the hallway wall. A scream echoed outside, then complete silence. Absolute silence. Clara slowly stepped backward, heart racing, because deep down she already knew. The people protecting Victor Hale had finally stopped warning her and started acting. Meanwhile, 20 floors below her apartment, a black luxury sedan sat parked across the street. Inside, Victor Hale looked up toward her lit window, then calmly said 4 words to the man beside him. Bring me the tapes. Bring me the tapes. Victor Hale's voice was calm, too calm. The kind of calm that only existed when a man believed he was untouchable. For 10 years, he had controlled the story. For 10 years, he had controlled the police, the newspapers, the witnesses, the narrative. And now one young woman was threatening to destroy everything. Clara didn't wait. The moment she saw the black sedan below her apartment, she left through the fire escape. The tapes were hidden inside her father's old pocket watch box, not in the apartment, not where anyone would think to look. Because she had learned something from Victor Hale. Powerful people always search the obvious places first. The next morning, every major television network in New York received an anonymous package. Inside each package was a copy of Emily Dawson's recording, along with documents, photographs, witness statements, and one question. Why was an innocent man blamed for a crime he never committed? By noon, the story exploded. By evening, it was everywhere. Television, radio, internet, newspapers. The city couldn't stop talking about Daniel Carter for the first time in 10 years. People were asking whether he had been innocent all along. Victor Hale moved quickly. Press conferences, lawyers, public statements, denials, lots of denials. I have never committed any crime. The recordings are fabricated. This is an attack against my reputation. His face appeared on every channel, confident, polished, convincing. But Clara knew something the public didn't. Victor was scared. Because innocent people defend themselves. Guilty people destroy evidence. And Victor had spent 10 years destroying evidence. 3 days later, Clara made her move. The final move. The move she had been planning since the beginning. She walked into the boutique, the same marble floor, the same diamond. The same place where her father's life had been destroyed. Only this time cameras followed her. Reporters waited outside. News vans lined the street. Everyone recognized her now. Daniel Carter's daughter. The manager intercepted her immediately. "Miss Carter." His voice was tense. "You shouldn't be here." Clara looked directly at him. "My father shouldn't have been here 10 years ago." The man lowered his eyes, unable to answer. Customers whispered. Employees watched. Security guards followed her movements. But Clara ignored all of them. She walked directly toward the Paragon diamond. The stone sparkled beneath the lights, just as it had 10 years earlier, just as it had the day everything began. Then Clara did something nobody expected. She reached toward the display case. Alarms exploded instantly. People screamed. Security rushed forward. Reporters outside pressed against the windows. Chaos erupted, exactly as Clara intended. "Step away from the display," a guard shouted. Clara calmly raised both hands. "I haven't taken anything." The irony hit everyone immediately. The exact same words her father had spoken, the exact same accusation, the exact same place. Several employees suddenly looked uncomfortable. Because, for the first time they understood, Daniel Carter had sounded exactly like an innocent man. Police arrived within minutes. News helicopters circled overhead. The entire city seemed to be watching. Then Clara made her real demand. "I want access to the original archive." The boutique owner stared at her. "There is no archive." Clara smiled, a sad smile. The basement level. The room fell silent. Behind the inventory vault, more silence. Then she added, "The room nobody has opened in 10 years. The owner's face lost all color. And in that moment, everyone knew. The archive existed. 3 hours later, a judge signed an emergency order. The archive was opened. For the first time in a decade, dust covered everything. Boxes, records, storage drives, forgotten evidence, thousands of pages. Thousands, most irrelevant, some damaged. But one box changed history. Inside sat an old security server, never destroyed, never reviewed, never disclosed, hidden, buried, forgotten. Or perhaps deliberately forgotten. Technicians worked through the night, recovering corrupted footage, repairing damaged files, searching through thousands of hours of recordings. Then finally, at 3:17 in the morning, someone found it, the missing footage. The room was packed. Police, journalists, lawyers, investigators. Everyone watched the screen. Nobody spoke. The footage began. Victor Hale appeared, standing near the display. Exactly where witnesses remembered him. Exactly where Emily's recording placed him. Then the camera angle shifted, and the truth emerged. Crystal clear, undeniable. Victor opened the display, took the diamond, placed it inside his jacket, then looked directly toward Daniel Carter, the innocent employee standing nearby. Seconds later, Victor slipped something into Daniel's workstation. Evidence, planted evidence, the trap, the entire setup captured on camera, every second, every lie, every betrayal. 10 years hidden inside a forgotten server. The room fell silent, absolute silence. Then someone began crying. A reporter, then another. Because everyone understood what they were witnessing. Not just a crime. An innocent man's life being stolen. Victor Hale was arrested before sunrise. He didn't fight, didn't speak, didn't deny it. The footage had destroyed him. His lawyers walked away. His business partners disappeared. His empire collapsed within weeks. The city that once celebrated him now condemned him. But Clara felt no joy, no victory, no satisfaction, because none of it could bring her father back. 2 months later, a ceremony was held at City Hall. Crowds filled the square. Journalists came from across the country. The mayor stepped to the podium, then spoke the words Clara had waited 10 years to hear. Daniel Carter was innocent. The crowd stood, thousands of people, standing together, applauding a man who should have received that respect while he was alive. Clara closed her eyes. Tears slipped down her cheeks. Not because of the applause. Because her father never heard it. The following morning she visited the cemetery. No reporters, no cameras, no speeches, just Clara and her father. The grass moved gently beneath the morning wind. Birds sang somewhere nearby. The city felt far away. For a long time she simply stood there, looking at the stone, remembering, missing him. Then she removed the pocket watch from her coat, the watch that had started everything, the watch that carried his secret, the watch that carried his faith. She knelt beside the grave and carefully placed it against the headstone. For a moment, she couldn't speak. The tears came too quickly, too heavily. 10 years of pain, 10 years of anger, 10 years of grief. Finally escaping. "You were right, Dad." Her voice broke. "I should have trusted the truth." The wind rustled softly through the trees, almost like an answer, almost like a whisper, almost like him. Clara smiled through her tears. A real smile this time. The first genuine smile she could remember in years. The weight she had carried for so long was finally gone. Not because she won, not because Victor lost, not because the city apologized, but because her father no longer carried the label of thief. His name was clean again, his honor restored, his story finally told. As the sun rose higher over New York, Clara stood and took one last look at the grave. Then she turned toward the path ahead, toward the future, toward a life no longer defined by what had been taken from her. Behind her, resting quietly against the stone, the old pocket watch caught the morning light. And for the first time in 10 years, Daniel Carter was finally home,